It was a routine night for the local police department. Officers were preparing for another quiet shift, expecting little more than routine patrols and the occasional traffic stop. But there was one member of the force who wasn't content with the monotony. Rex, the canine unit, sat in the corner of the station, eyeing his handler, his keen sense of anticipation humming beneath his fur. But the other officers didn't share the same respect for the dog. They mocked him, joked about his training, and laughed off his instincts as a waste of time. They were all about the traditional methods, speeding tickets, talking to witnesses, and staking out criminals the old-fashioned way. No one took Rex seriously. That was until a night that would change everything. Rex wasn't just any police dog. He was a highly trained German shepherd, bred for high-intensity situations. His instincts were sharp, honed by years of training in scent detection, search and rescue, and apprehension. But despite his impressive resume, Rex had earned a reputation at the station, not for his abilities, but for his excessive energy and overzealousness. Officers often joked that he was just a big dog with a badge who barked at shadows and got in the way of real work. One evening, as the team gathered around the break room after a long day, Rex's handler, Officer Miller, was trying to convince his colleagues to give the dog more credit. "He's got instincts you can't even imagine," Officer Miller said, nudging Rex to demonstrate a trick. But the officers weren't buying it. "Yeah, sure," Officer Harris said, rolling his eyes. "I'll believe it when I see it. For now, I'd rather rely on my gun and gut feeling than on a dog to get the job done." The room was filled with laughter. Rex's ears perked up, but he remained still. It wasn't the first time the officers had dismissed him, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. Officer Miller shot Rex a resigned glance, knowing that convincing the others would take more than a few words. The night grew dark and quiet, but the silence didn't last long. A call came through the station, sending everyone into action. A local grocery store had been robbed, and the suspects were believed to be holed up in an abandoned building on the outskirts of town. The officers scrambled, grabbing their gear, preparing for what they thought would be another routine bust. They were confident, cocky even, as they piled into their vehicles, Rex's leash attached to Officer Miller's hand. "You know, we could have just knocked down the door and arrested them, like we always do," Officer Harris joked, trying to break the tension. "No need to bring in the circus dog." The other officers laughed. But Rex, as if sensing the undercurrent of doubt, stood alert in the back of the patrol car, his nose twitching, his mind sharp. He was more than ready, but he knew something the others didn't. As they arrived at the building, the officers began their usual approach. No canine assistance, no extra caution. They set up their perimeter, readying their weapons, determined to make a quick arrest. Rex, however, refused to sit idly. He pulled at his leash, eager to take the lead. "Stay, boy," Officer Miller said softly, but Rex wasn't having it. He was already at the edge of the perimeter, sniffing the ground with a determination that made Officer Miller pause. Something was wrong. The officers advanced into the building, the dim glow of their flashlights slicing through the darkness. The air was thick with tension as they moved room to room, clearing each corner, every shadow. The suspects, whoever they were, had planned this well. They'd left no traces, no sign of life. The officers began to relax, assuming the criminals had fled. But Rex wasn't convinced. His body tensed and his nose twitched as he pawed at the ground, trying to move faster than Officer Miller could hold him back. Finally, Rex broke free, darting into the nearest room. Officer Miller rushed after him, calling the dog back, but Rex's focus was locked. The dog's instincts had kicked into high gear. Suddenly, the officers heard a faint noise, a soft shuffle coming behind a stack of crates in the back corner of the room. The hairs on the back of their necks stood up as they crept closer. It wasn't just a shuffle, it was the sound of a gun being cocked. Rex growled low, positioning himself between the officers and the threat, his eyes locked onto the figures hidden in the shadows. Without hesitation, Rex lunged forward, pinning one of the suspects to the ground, biting into his arm. The other suspect raised a gun, but before he could aim, Officer Miller shot him down. In the chaos, Rex's growl filled the air, a sound of warning, of protection. He had known long before the officers that something was wrong. While they had been too cocky to consider the real danger, Rex had been working tirelessly, sniffing out danger in a way that no one could deny. As the scene settled, the officers breathed a collective sigh of relief. They had apprehended both suspects without injury, and the stolen goods were recovered. For a moment, the quiet of the night returned, but the tension in the air remained. Officer Harris walked over to Rex, who was sitting calmly by Officer Miller, his tail wagging gently. "You know," Harris said, bending down to pet the dog, "I owe you an apology, Rex." The others gathered around, nodding in agreement. "We all do," Officer Daniels added. "That dog saved our lives tonight." Officer Miller smiled, watching the dog bask in the newfound praise. Rex had done more than save the day. He had proven his worth, his loyalty, and the value to the team. The officers who once mocked him were now in awe of his abilities, realizing that the skills of a canine unit were far more than just tricks. They were the difference between life and death. The canine unit wasn't just a tool. It was a partner, a protector, and in moments like these, Rex was the one who saw what others couldn't. The officers learned a lesson that night. Never underestimate the loyalty, the instincts, and the heart of a police dog.